Hey, bonjour, Kirby Jambon, encore avec vous autres. Comment ça va? Today we're going to do a little special video pertaining to Louisiana French, also a little bit pertaining to my books of poetry. And before we begin, I do want to say merci beaucoup, thank you all. I'm able to do a video now, I have some time. I started this channel a long time ago during the pandemic and haven't been able to do a lot of videos once we were back in the regular school year. But I do have a little time. I'm on a medical leave, and I thank everyone who's been praying for me since I had my surgery for cancer, and all those who've been giving me well wishes and thoughts and loving care, and so appreciate it. Merci beaucoup. But I'm doing well, and we're going to survive this. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. The video we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some Louisiana French terms. Now, I did a similar video to this in French, but I want to do this one as well for those who might be still be more in the learning phase of Louisiana French. In each of my books of poetry, my three books, L'École Gombo, Petite Communion, and then my third book, Chercher, chasse-femme, there is a sort of glossary and glossade and lexique a little in the back where I explain some terms, explique some terms of Louisiana French. Could be just some general Louisiana French terms that might not be very common amongst other French speakers. Could be some terms specific to the Fouche Parish Cajun French, or some specific terms to Louisiana Creole. And so I explain those ideas in the back of the book. In my third book, I decided to do something a little different. This book, some of the poems in this book were inspired by a visit I had to La Rochelle in France, where I read for Le Printemps des Poètes, and a big event that they had in La Rochelle where they had different poets who read poetry. I was invited by my friend Raymond Beausier, and it was a wonderful experience. I loved the experience so much. And some of the poems were a little inspired by that experience. So I decided to do something in order to do the little glossary. I decided to do specific words that are in Louisiana French that are found in some of my poems that are also found in this, which is le glossary des vieux parlers Poitevin. And what this is a glossary of the way that French was spoken in the region, the Poitou region, that region over there where they spoke the variety of French that they spoke, which is also a region where a lot of Acadians are originally from. And so it has a lot of these old terms. And I saw some terms, wow, these are some terms I found in Louisiana French. Some terms are still found in Old Acadian French, but then some terms I've only seen here in Louisiana and in this glossary. So it's really kind of interesting. So we're going to discuss those terms. In the back of the book, this is Chercher la chasse-femme, and all the way in the back, I have a little section that's called Rencontre du Cajun et du Poitevin. And in here I list some terms that are found in there. And we're going to talk about those terms and how do we say them in Louisiana French, how they're said in international French, and how they're used. So I'm going to discuss those terms with you today. And all of these terms are also found in the glossary. So the first of these terms I'm going to talk about is the way we would say to sit down, the verb to sit down. Internationally, the verb to sit down is s'asseoir, but it's also a common familiar phrase, s'asseoir. You'll find that in Acadian French and Louisiana French, s'asseoir. You would find another one that you're going to find in Louisiana French that's in this dictionary is s'assit, s'assit with a T sound at the end. In fact, I remember on va s'assit is another expression. My grandmother used to say, s'assit. And so that's another type of way of saying to sit down. So on peut dire assis-toi, on va s'asseoir, on va s'assit, s'assit. These are different ways to say sit down. Okay. The other one, of course, is asteur. Asteur is a word we find in Canadian French. We find it in a few parts of France, parts of Belgium, and of course in Louisiana French. And it comes from the expression à cette heure, at this time. And you put it all together. As in Louisiana French, we tend to drop the unaccented E, so it becomes asteur. And of course, in international French, that would be maintenant, à présent, that kind of expression. Another word they had in there was the word attiner. Attiner. Attiner is a word we use to mean to tease or to pick on somebody. Attiner. Pourquoi tu m'attines? Oh, il m'a tiné. Why are you teasing me? Why did you tease me? Okay, attiner. Internationally, you might hear more terms like irriter or provoquer or taquiner, words like that, but we use the word attiner to mean to tease. Another thing you find a little phenomenon is is the use of certain words have have a T at the end of them. One example, aussi. Aussi, which means also, to, T-O-O. And you'll hear that in Louisiana French used that way, but we also would say osit or osit, osit or osit. And you'll find that some in Acadian French as well, this idea of putting a little T sound at the end of a word like that. The next word I have here is the word body. Body, which seems to mean bar, comes from the word bar, and we use it to mean to lock. Internationally, it would be more like fermer à clé or fermer au verrou. But we use more body, and in Canada they use body as well. And it comes from the whole concept that you would put a bar, to close a door, to lock it, make sure it was there. So body is the word we use. Okay. Brailler for pleurer. Now, brailler is used, when I remember I lived in Nova Scotia for a little while, that was the term the Acadians used to cry, brailler. And in certain parts of Louisiana, that's the term they use to cry, brailler. Others would use probably both the terms pleurer and brailler. Like where I was from, it was more pleurer, but brailler was kind of like, when a little kid would like cry, like having a fit. Oh yeah, brailler, il est après brailler. But I might not use it to say if someone's crying at a funeral. I might not use it that way. But other parts of the state would use it all the time. Braille. There's an old song, braille pas mes chers petits yeux bleus. Don't cry, my pretty little blue eyes. So you have the term brailler. Okay. Cabinet, and word we use very much so in Lafourche Parish and in different parts of Louisiana. And cabinet is a cabinet. Un cabinet can be a placard or an armoire in international French, but we tend to call it a cabinet. Now, in some parts in France, a cabinet would be more often used to mean where a sort of restroom. Okay, but we would use more often the word la cabine to mean a restaurant rather than a cabinet. But I think there are parts of Louisiana where they do use cabinet for a restroom as well. We use la cabine, which is also the word we use for an outhouse to mean a restroom. And that's one of the words we use for a restroom, la cabine. Well, a restroom would be more la cabine. If it was in a house, you would say en chambre à bain, a bathroom, but in cabine. Okay. Here's an interesting word, catin, right? Catin, catin is a word we use in Louisiana French to mean and poupée, a doll, a D-O-L, a doll, like a baby doll, and catin. But we also use it to describe a woman or a girl who's pretty like a doll, like ma jolie catin. There's even there's a wonderful group of musicians in Louisiana called Bonsoir Catin. Okay. Now, if you look in an International French Dictionary, you'll find catin, the doll listed down in a definition, but the first definition is not that. It actually refers to lady of the evening, I guess we could say. But so it might present a little bit of an interesting dilemma if you're in France, to using the word catin. I believe in Canada they use catin. They sometimes pronounce it, if I'm not mistaken, caton or something like that. Like in Bay Sainte Marie for sure, like in Nova Scotia, I think they pronounce it that way. Maybe wrong, but I think so. Débarrer would be the opposite of barrer, to unlock, right? Déshabiller, very good word we use here. Déshabiller is the word we use to mean to uncover, In international French, it would be more découvrir ou mettre à découvert. For me, découvrir would be more discover, but déshabiller would mean to be uncovered. For example, when I used to be a kid, when I was a kid, and I didn't want to get up in the morning, my dad would come in with a very sweet little voice. He'd say, all right, Tiger, time to get up, And if I didn't get up, il m'a déshabillé. He would pull the covers and the sheets off of me. I'm like, Dad, but déshabillé. And that's it. It's okay. Droite meaning droite or right. Droite, we typically use droite in Louisiana French, not necessarily for the direction, right? But we use it in the expression, like, for example, right now or right here, okay? Droite à cette heure ou droite là. And instead of saying droite, we would say droite. And that comes from an old French pronunciation, also an old Acadian pronunciation, to change sometimes that wa to we or e sound. The wa becomes we or e. That sound becomes switched in certain words. In old Acadian French, from what my understanding, it was found all over the place. In Louisiana French, you find it with certain words. Like for some places in Louisiana, we'll say droite, others will say droite. Some people for right. For example, for a star in some regions of Louisiana, they'll say an étoile, while others will say, like internationally, étoile. For a box, for example, in some regions they'll say the la en boîte, and others will say en boîte for a box. And again, again it depends on the regions of the state as well. Drigai. Drigai is a word we use, especially in the southeastern parts of the state. Drigai. Drigai is like the objects without much value, I should say. Internationally, we might call that affaire de peu de valeur, de fouillis, de bric-à-brac. You might use those terms internationally. But drigai is what we used to mean stuff or junk. It could mean just a generic thing. J'ai des drigai là-bas. It could just mean some stuff. It doesn't mean it necessarily good or bad. Or drigai can mean like junky stuff. It can mean both, either stuff without any value, not good, or just stuff in general. Okay, so it can mean like stuff, junk, des drigai. Okay. Envaler. Instead of saying avaler, to swallow, we would attempt to say envaler, something we use very much in where I'm from. Envaler. Okay. Us. Us is the third person plural term that we use, and it's used internationally. It would be il, I-L-S, or elle, E-L-L-E-S, depending if it was a male or mixed group, or a masculine or mixed group, or a female or feminine group. We use the term, especially in the southeastern parts of the state, us, to describe in general all who are all in that third person. In other words, they. Okay, they in general. In English, we only say they. We don't have a masculine or feminine form. In French, you have a masculine and feminine form. In Louisiana French, you don't tend to use a masculine or feminine form. Others might say eux autres or e, or ça, but in some regions, like where I'm from, we would say us. Framer. Rather than say fermer to close, we say framer to close. We kind of the R and the E are changed. Fermer, framer. Frame la porte. Close the door. Garrocher, a word I've heard in Canada as well. Garrocher, a word meaning to throw, to lancer, as we say internationally. Garrocher. Okay. And grémille, and grémillon is the word we use for like a grain or a crumb, I should say, like in French, in miette or in granule, and petite grémille, il y avait des petites grémilles. The terms for il or IL or ILS plural, either meaning he or it or they, as well as the term lui, for lui in the sense of, in international French, you would say, if I was giving something to someone, I would say, je lui donne, okay? Je lui donne. We'd say lui, but we tend to say I. J'y donne, okay? J'y donne, and then I, to begin a sentence, il aime ça, il mange, he eats, rather than il mange, il mange. Okay. Again, ici is similar to like aussi, ici meaning here, but we would also pronounce it ici or ici. You would hear ici or ici here in Louisiana French, parts of Canada as well. Ici or ici. Lécher, which means to lick, we use the term licher. And actually, and then you use it, for example, mon chien me liche. My dog licks me, licher, rather than lécher, okay, or lèche. Okay. Menterie, we'd use menterie rather than mensonge. Menterie meaning a lie, right? We tend to use the word, rather than mensonge, we say the word menterie. I might have shared this story before, but I remember when I was visiting the city of Quebec. In that city, we took a tour of the Chateau of Frontenac, that big hotel, and our tour guide was amazing. It was really fun. But at one point, he just stops and he said, en français, est-ce qu'on dit des menteries ou des mensonges? In French, do we say des menteries for lies, or do we say des mensonges for lies? And of course, there were some French folks from France that were there, and they go, no, nous, on dit mensonge. And I said, well, nous, en Louisiane, on dit menterie. They said in France, they say mensonge. In Louisiana, we say menterie. And he goes, no. En français, on dit la vérité. In French, we speak the truth. We don't tell lies, neither menterie or mensonge. But in Louisiana French, we do say menterie. Okay. Misérer. Misérer would mean to live miserably, vivre misérablement. Mouiller for pleuvoir, to rain. In international French, more il pleut. Here you would hear il mouille or ça mouille. Il mouille or ça mouille. Mouiller meaning to rain. Now the word for rain is also here, the noun rain. And what's interesting, I always saw it written, spelled as la pluie. There was an L in it, but when I look in this glossary, they didn't pronounce the L. either. I thought it was just something we just dropped, but it's old pronunciation. We say la pluie, not la pluie with an L in it, but la pluie without an L for the noun, the rain. So to rain, mouiller, il mouille, ça mouille. There is some rain, il y a la pluie for that idea. All right. Another one is the word puis for puis. Puis meaning then, following, puis, ensuite. We would say just say puis. We wouldn't say pronounce the little u. Puis. Plus. Now, plus is the word plus. And an interesting thing you have in French is that plus, plus, can be pronounced plus or plus. When it's pronounced in Louisiana French as plus or plus, it means more. Okay? Or it means like the ER ending following a certain adjective. Like on a eu plus de pluie, we had some more rain. Okay? Il est plus content. He's happier. Okay? But when it's used as without the S or the L sound, it's pronounced plus, and it's used to mean no more. Okay? All right? Je travaille plus. I don't work anymore. That kind of thing. Je fais plus ça. I don't do that anymore. So for example, I want to say I don't do it, I'd say je fais pas. If I wanted to say I don't do it anymore, je fais plus. Je fais plus ça. Je fais pas ça. Je fais plus ça. The plus meaning that. Now, international French, they would use the negative, the ne, with the plus, so that they could have a distinction between the two plus sounds. But in Louisiana French, we don't use the ne ever. So plus, plus, more, plus, anymore, not anymore, no more, kind of thing. All right. Plutôt, rather than plutôt or pito, rather than pluto, which is the word we use to mean rather, somewhat. Okay. Quelque. We say quelque rather than quelque. Quelque chose. Quelqu'un. We don't say quelqu'un or quelque chose. We say quelqu'un, quelque chose. Seau. For a seau is a bucket. And one of the words we use for a bucket, you have other words, and baquet, bassin, but we use seau is a word. We pronounce it with the seau, like a little E sound in there. Here's one I rarely found any other place, and that's the word souris chaude. And souris chaude is the word we use for a bat, the flying mammal bat. Internationally, it's pronounced in chauve souris. Chauve meaning bald, souris meaning mouse. Okay, but I found in this dictionary, I found this one. It was souris chaude, which would mean mouse hot or hot mouse. Now I don't know the origin of those, but I just realized that hey, it might not be a mouse. If they did pronounced it that way in the old days, sometimes you figure out there are certain words that we think that the way we pronounce it is wrong, that we changed it, but perhaps that it's got changed some other place. I'm not really sure for this word, but I know we say souris chaude. Mm-hmm. Trompe. Trompe is a word we use to mean mouiller, as wet. Okay. For example, because we use mouiller for rain, to be wet is we use the word trompe. All right. And internationally, it could be tromper as well. Mouiller, tromper, meaning to be wet or to be soaked. For example, like to wet something, we say on va le tromper. To soak something, je vais mettre à la trompe. We'll use that term trompe to mean wet. And then virer meaning to turn. Now we do use tourner, but we do also use virer de bord. Okay, turn around, virer. Kind of the word veer in international, in English, I should say. And then this last one is the letter Z, red Z, is the word zir, where we found in old Acadian French as well. Zir meaning disgust. Using the expression ça me fait zir, which would mean causer du dégoût, de la répulsion. I mean, just like to make you feel disgust, to make you feel, as in the old days we would say, grossed out, dude. All right, so zir, faire zir. And the interesting thing is that Louisiana is kind of unique, that we also made it into an adjective, a word we call zirable. We add the little able and then zirable. So ça me fait zir, that means it disgusts me, parce que c'est zirable, but because it's disgusting. C'est zirable. Okay. But you know what's not disgusting? Not at all. Learning about Louisiana French, reading Louisiana French poetry, and sharing a video with y'all today. Please stay tuned to my channel. And I want you to help me right now too. for if you're watching this today, when I post it, I think I just need about I need just a few dozen more subscribers to get to my next level of 2,000 subscribers. So maybe you could subscribe to my channel, and also if you're able to make a donation, so I can maybe get some better equipment and one day. I keep saying that, I know, and do you can make a donation through PayPal or YouTube. Mais j'apprécie beaucoup. And if you can't, hey, okay, I appreciate just you tuning in. I have gratitude for everything in my life. And merci beaucoup vous autres. Et je vais vous quitter avec mon message comme d'habitude. I'll leave you with my usual message. Soignez vous autres et soignez les autres. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. Bye bye.